So, we got here. I have to say that from the workshops that I was involved in and from wandering around and talking to you all, it's been absolutely amazing. The quality of your inputs is phenomenal. And so I want to thank all of you for participating in this. It's really, really impressive. Thank you all very much. Give yourselves a round of applause. A few people have said, so what is all of this about? What's going to happen to it now? So I thought it might be quite useful just to give you a quick overview. It started with all these local meetings across rural Scotland who gave us the draft of the manifesto, and now you've put your input into that and designed our action plan. So what will happen next? Why did we want to do a manifesto in the first place? Since the last Rural Parliament, a lot of times Scottish Rural Action has been asked to respond to either consultations or to press statements or whatever, but because we haven't got your shared view of all of these different topics, it's been very, we can't talk on your behalf unless we know what you think. So one of the reasons that we decided that this year we would produce a manifesto is so that we had a shared position on all of the topics that you care about. And so that's why. So it will help us over the next 2 years, as new consultations emerge, or if we are asked for a comment, this manifesto that you're helping to write will actually give us position statements so that we can speak on your behalf in between rural parliaments. And that's really, really important. And the other thing that's important is, there's now an action plan with actions for each of the themes in the manifesto. And that's important because when we talk to people, to policymakers, to local authorities, to Scottish Government, we need to be able to say, we want to do this. These are the actions that have been suggested at the Rural Parliament, and they are to support our manifesto aims. So I just wanted to spend just a couple of minutes just explaining that all, and I hope it makes sense. And then we'll get back into talking about the manifesto itself. So I hope you've all had a great afternoon so far, and I'm really looking forward to the next bit. Hope you are too. So I'm going to hand you over so we can talk more about the manifesto itself. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andy Lippock, so I'm going to host the first part of this afternoon's session. So as Amanda said, we've essentially got a version 0.9.1.3 of the manifesto. What we want to get to is to nudge it into a version 1.0, something that's final, has been affirmed by yourselves, so that it can be then sent on its way. So that's what we're going to do this afternoon. And we're going to nudge it along in a couple of ways. So the first thing we want to do is some additions that you've been working on this morning are going to be included, and we'll cover those separately in a moment. But the first thing I would like us to do first is to ask a question, and simply in a show of hands, and hopefully there'll be a majority, and it's democratic, so be enthusiastic when you do raise your hands for this. So I'm going to ask the question: are we in agreement that the manifesto as a whole now represents the needs and views of rural communities in Scotland in the current draft version? If you're in agreement with that, raise your hands now. Does that look like a majority or not? There's a lot of people whose hands are down. So the opposite might be, for those who are not in agreement that the manifesto in its current state represents the needs and views of rural Scotland, can you put up your hands? Thank you very much. Do I take, for those people who didn't put their hands up, either they didn't feel able to vote, or they felt a little bit equivocal at this moment in time, what we could assume is that we could take it on to the next stage. If you're comfortable with that, we can do that. Add in the additions, so you'll be able to vote on those additions. And we will come back to another vote on the final document at that stage. Nods all round? Are we in agreement? Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay, so we've now got the stage where we can do some additions. See if I can manage this. And what I'm going to do is show on the slides each addition, a number of which, and I will call up the person who put forward that addition and ask that person to come forward and just read what's on the screen so that you give it some ownership that has been put forward by yourself. There are, however, also a number of additions that didn't have any names against those, and we'll just show those on the screen. The process then is, at the end of each addition, as it's read out, you'll notice you're sitting on, or will have seen, two cards, a yellow one and a red one. And when I ask you to, if you're in favour, or that you're in principle happy with that amendment, to raise the yellow card. If you're absolutely against that amendment or that addition, then to raise your red. I'll recap that later, but that's essentially how we're going to do the voting. Okay. So, we had on arts and culture an addition there, and that was from Anne Packard. Where are you, Anne? Do you want to come forward?
Alter paragraph 2 to the intrinsic social, economical and environmental value of arts and cultural activities, including where relevant, all other languages and cultures, should be recognised, promoted and celebrated by rural communities and the public and private sectors for their contribution to new synergy, dynamism and collaborations.
Thank you, Anne. We felt this, rather than being a new section, this was a substantive addition to the existing section within the manifesto. So just digest this just for a moment. And if you're ready to vote, if you're in favour of the inclusion of this additional piece, then use your yellow cards. It's an altered paragraph. There is another slide that's got a couple of additional pieces in terms of the arts and culture. I'll come on to that. Thanks for reminding me. But this is essentially to alter paragraph 2. So again, this is going to be on majority voting, so we've got people around to help count if absolutely necessary. So if you're in favour of adding this paragraph, then raise your yellow cards. Thank you very much. If you're absolutely, unequivocally against this, raise the red card. Nobody. Otherwise you would have had to deal with Anne. And she's a formidable person, I know. Thank you very much, everyone. Okay, so you've got the gist of how we're going to do this now. Good. So, these were a couple of additions that didn't have any names against them. So you can read them for yourselves, but I'll just read it as well. So there's 2 bits, including where relevant all languages and culture in Scotland, both Indigenous Gaelic, Scots and Doric, and those of more recent immigrants. Recognising how participation and provision of cultural and arts activities can affect and reduce economic burden in many agencies, improving well-being, social connection, and reducing the impact on health, social and police services. I'll give you a moment to digest. Have a think how you're going to vote on this. If you feel ready. Again, if you're in the affirmative, raise yellow cards. Sorry? Do you want them separate paragraphs? Okay, the first one then. Sorry? There seems to be people who are saying this is already included in it. Amanda, do you have a view? I need somebody here just to help with this, perhaps. Yeah.
This actually specifically mentions Indigenous Gaelic, Scots and Doric and those more recent immigrants. So this is being more inclusive than the previous paragraph. It could be melded with the previous paragraph so that it wasn't repetitive, if that's what people want to do. The draft manifesto says the intrinsic value of arts and cultural activity. Oh, sorry, let me come over here and speak loud.
I think if you keep the second mic then, Amanda, yeah.
Okay, so the original draft, I have to take my glasses off because I can't read with them on. The intrinsic value of arts and cultural activities, including where relevant, Gaelic language and culture, should be recognised and celebrated by rural communities, public and private sector agencies. So this actually changes the Gaelic language and culture to be more inclusive and includes Scots and Doric and languages of recent immigrants. So I think that's what we're voting on, is whether you want this longer version as opposed to just Gaelic.
Okay.
So can we...
Hold on, one at a time.
Maybe we could just flash back to the slide before.
Oh, sorry.
That's it. So maybe what we should say is all other languages, including the list in this proposed amendment. Would that keep everybody happy? Sorry? Okay, so we've got the case that if we're saying all other languages, these are already included and therefore are not necessary. How many people would agree with that? Just give me a quick show of hands. Well, we voted on this alteration, but now we've got another alteration and we're asking about inclusion. So I've got probably about 2/3 of the room are saying that this is sufficient. We do not need to specify Gaelic, Dorics, etc. Can we...
But there's some people here who seem to say you wish to include.
So have I got any dissenting opinions on that? Who would like to explain? Simon?
Yes, thank you. I think it's important that we list languages because there is a tendency to think that English encompasses Scots and that Scots encompasses Doric. And if we wish to preserve the native linguistic traditions of Scotland, then I think Scots and Doric need to be named as well as Gaelic, not instead of Gaelic. But I think they all three have to be named.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Would anybody else like to comment on that? Let me bring you the microphone, sir.
Scots and Gaelic and Doric are not other languages, they're our languages.
I think that's a good point. Yeah? So does that sort of give everybody a chance, thinking that over then, about whether or not we want to specify these languages because they are our languages, they're not other languages? That was what the gentleman was saying. Can we maybe... Oh, there's somebody else would like to say something at the back. Hang on. I'm running over to you here. No, wait, because people will shout at me if they can't hear you. Here we go.
I'm just confused on whether if the intention is for it to read all cultures and languages, including new ones, or specifically our culture, because it doesn't seem like you can have both if you list specific cultures after using the word all.
Okay, thank you very much. Back to you, Andy.
So, what we need to decide is, having voted for the previous, that one, what we're asking is, do we add in or somehow ask the board to meld in some way this paragraph with some of the comments which have been noted into that paragraph? Are we happy to take a vote on whether we make some amendment including that, which seems to be a sense? Yeah, on the first paragraph. So, are we happy with going for the vote? So if you're happy to go for that one in addition to and meld the two together in some way, raise your yellow cards. Okay. Any totally objecting to that, raise a red. No. 3. I'm recognising those. Okay. Majority vote, the yellow have got it. On the second paragraph then, recognise I'll not read it again. You can see there. So if we're ready to vote in favour of adding that paragraph in, raise your yellow cards. Okay. For those of you who wish to abjectly object to that paragraph, raise your red cards. 1, 2. Okay, majority has it. Thank you. So that's been accepted. Thank you. So there's an addition to the section about business, and this is essentially around microbusiness. Sheena Boyd, Sheena here. Do you want to just quickly read that out?
A recognition of and support to mitigate additional costs faced by rural microbusiness, and a recognition of rural microbusinesses' contribution to the social fabric of communities. There's an apostrophe missing. There you go.
Correcting my English. Well, it's really my typing. Okay. So with the inclusion of the apostrophe, important. Those of you in favour of this one, raise yellow cards. Okay. Those of you against it, raise a red. Okay, noted.
Yes, but you haven't even asked. You've done the previous one. You asked if anybody had any comment. You didn't ask if anybody had any comment.
I'm conscious of the time.
I know, my comment is extremely small.
Do you want to make a very small comment then?
A micro comment for microbusiness.
A micro comment.
It is a small comment, because when we talk about micro businesses, we usually mean self-employed and up to 2, maybe 5 employees. And I said it before that I constantly believe we should have micro and small businesses, because then you get around the problem. Most rural businesses could be classified as micro or small.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that may be just something to add in. I'm aware from the work I'm involved in where we talk about SMEs, small, medium enterprises, and a lot of people talk about, what about the micro businesses? So can we make sure, therefore, that that is included so that it is all inclusive and everybody will be happy? Nods all round? Aye, good. Okay, broadband and our favourite. Can we just move on? Right, there's 2 in here. So there's this one here, Scottish, and so this one was actually Paul Johnson. Is Paul around? Paul, I'll come over here.
From here. The Scottish and UK governments should work together towards a high-speed 4G, 5G mobile network in rural Scotland to serve rural business, agriculture, and those places out with the reach of the fibre networks.
Okay, lots of saying well done, etc. There is another one in addition to this, but it's a very short one, I think. So, you've thought about this. If you're in favour, raise yellow cards. Do we need to ask about red cards? Who's going to be embarrassed by raising a red card? Excellent, thank you. So, this one is probably an amendment, perhaps, but it's substantive enough. So this is around superfast is too slow. Good grief. What do you want to beyond superfast? Rocket fast, yeah? Too slow and already being overtaken in urban areas. Suggest that we start with a gigabyte. Rural communities should start with the best in class rather than perpetually catching up with everyone else. Now, the additional piece is adopt affordable 4G in rural areas out with the reach of fibre. I think there might be a technical issue with that. Around 4G is that possible with? Gigabit? Can somebody
I'll sort that, don't worry.
sort out? Thank goodness for the technological people here. A gigabit, okay. What about the 4G out with fibre? Is there a technical issue around that? Is it possible? Okay. We'll take those two together. So, if in favour of that, raise yellow. If you're against it, red. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Do you want to say why? Do you want to...
Let me come over.
Hold on. The microphone is on its way.
Microphone's coming. Here we go.
In this particular instance, why does it have to be affordable? Because if it's affordable, that's the reason for not doing it. If it's not affordable, that's the reason for not doing it. And that's why we don't have it. So if you put affordable, then we'll just not get it.
I'd just like to make a comment on this, that the broadband group have got significant actions around these, some of which are aspirational, some of which are doable now.
So, I think essentially in this one, my take on it would be that there's already a huge amount being done. There's the biggest paragraph, biggest section. I think we've already got that within the SRA, within their gift to work away on that. Okay? Move on. So the next one is around community councils. And this was at Fiona Morrison. Where's Fiona?
Here, Fiona.
Got one there.
It wasn't community councils, actually. It was communities. Sorry. Okay. So we took the view and holistic, proactive approach to positive community impact and planning driven by local people that leads to decision-making by all the decision-makers across all sectors, particularly service provision. As you heard me say before, if people choose to live in a place and there's lots of lights there, even though they accept some lights are not there, some services, that's fine.
Okay.
But then if the lights go out,
okay,
the place dies.
Thank you. Forgive me, I was looking at my next notes. You're right. So that's under the communities and civil society. Okay. If you're in favour of adding that in, yellow cards, please. Thank you. If you're absolutely against this one, red. No? Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for that. So this one's about the community councils. So this, I think, was this a new section? Yeah. So we included this one as a brand new section rather than subsuming it one of the others. So Andy Holmes. Where's Andy? Amanda's got it there. Over there.
Thanks. I wasn't quite sure which section to stick it under anyway, so thanks.
Are you happy with it as a new section?
Yeah, if we're happy to go with that.
Yeah.
For the Scottish Community Government to follow through on the recommendations of the 1999, a long time ago, Macintosh report relating to community councils, namely, community councils should be given a more influential role. And there's obviously quite a few other bits in there as well, but some have been done, and should also be given more money and better facilities to take a prominent role in the Scottish democratic system. And so this was actually recommended, 16, 17 years ago now?
Long time ago. Okay.
Thank you.
People are keen to get the yellow cards up. Right, go on. Yellow cards in favour. Hands straight up. Excellent. Yeah, so that's a quote from... Do you want to say anything? Not really?
I think personally I would be happier if there was something about accountability of community councils to the communities as well as that. I don't have any problem with that, but it's not balanced with accountability.
Okay. A few people nodding around, so have we got that noted in terms of something? Thank you, Brona. Accountability. Cool. Okay. There was some additional ones, just two very brief additions to go in. Community councils should be provided with all adequate training as required. Local councils must respond to any planning objection made by a community council in detail. Yellow. Yup. Reds. Okay, that's taken. Oh, sorry.
Hang on, Janet, I'm bringing your mic.
I'm on there.
A point relating to that, and it kind of relates to the previous point about accountability, that if, in that case, community councils must be obliged to consult their communities before responding to planning applications, because otherwise they don't reflect the views of their communities, and I can think of a few examples of that.
Yeah, I think that's a general...
We've noted that.
Personal experience as well. Yep. What do you want, Emma? Do you want to vote again?
Could we add the word effectively to consult or transparently to consult?
Or just get on and do it? Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
I've got a question about whether one word would be helpful there, which would be respond to any legitimate planning objection. That comes out in the accountability side of things.
Okay, I think we've noted a few things there. Okay, we've got something to go with some minor changes. Yeah, okay. So, all in favour, yellow. Thank you very much. Total objections to that inclusion, red. Grand, we'll move on. Thank you. So, next one, democracy and governance. So, we've already got a section for that. And this was a major change to the second bullet point. For those of you who got the document in front of you, you'll see there. Who was that? Anne Winter. Do you want to do both as well? Yeah.
Active engagement by the Scottish Government and local councils in the growing movement for change around local democracy. This must deliver new community powers and budgets, community and regional planning partnerships, and the transparency and the outcomes of local decision making. And then the fourth bullet point, an independent body of appeal needs to be set up to consider conflicts between communities and local authorities.
Thank you very much. While you're cogitating, are we happy to take both together? Speed things up? Or separate? Let's do it separate. Okay, on the amendment or addition to that second bullet point, go for yellow. Okay. Objections to that adoption? Okay, thank you. Carried that one. The fourth bullet point. Yellow to adopt that.
Is this an amendment or an addition? Sorry, is this an amendment or a replacement?
And it's an addition. Okay, thanks for the clarity. So I think it's to the end of the bullet point. Is that right, Dan? Thank you. Right, so it's an addition to the end. Okay, vote yellow for addition. Thank you very much. Red. Do you want to comment?
I mean, in this scenario, who is deemed to represent the communities? Is it the community council? Is it other community bodies? There are sometimes conflicts. Remember that the local authority generally has the democratic mandate, whereas community councils such as the one I'm a member of, we doesn't, because there's no conflict. I just think that's adding an additional layer of complexity that's absolutely not needed.
Thank you very much. If there's a conflict between a different level of government and another one, then the legal process can be initiated, and there's no difference why that wouldn't apply in a community council challenging the decision, the legality of a decision of the local authority. So I think if you're going to do this, have an independent body of appeal, then that independent body should cover not just these two tiers of local government, but they should also the interaction between one other tier of government and another tier of government. So I think it's a much bigger decision. This is a constitutional decision for the whole of the country.
Sorry? Re-vote. Do you want to do a re-vote on that? Okay. So let's do a re-vote on the addition of that one there. Yellow to go for and include it. Red against it. Do we need to do a count? I think we do on that one. Yeah? So keep the reds up, please, and we'll just do a vote. Have you got a total there? Yeah. Have you got a total? What was that? 21. So yellow. Right, keep your hands up for yellow. $25 yellows and 21 reds. Okay, we've got that recorded. Thank you. So moving on. So this is an addition to the depopulation demographic changes. This was Camilla Dressler. She's away, right. So in parallel, rural communities should have access to skills and methodologies for data collections and analysis. Platforms should be provided to share findings and lessons learned. So this is very much in the area of open data, which I know the Scottish Government are keen to promote much more. So all that kind of data should be open. So there's already that intention, I'm aware. So we're just making that as an emphasis.
Could we add by the government after a platform should be provided?
By the government. Add that in. Yeah. Yeah, so the all public sector. All public sector. All public sector.
Sorry, I was in the... Sorry, I said in this workshop, and I think one of the primary goals that came out of it was for it to be more of a community-led initiative rather than mandated from the government. But of course, that's open.
Okay, so we've got some comments there. Anybody else?
Another one here.
Oh, yep, hold on.
I'm not sure I understand what it means. Does it mean rural communities having access to data to inform what they do next? I just don't get a sense that that sentence makes any sense.
Thank you. Camilla's not here to...
Would you like to respond?
Yeah, I didn't write the sentence, but the idea was to have an approach or a platform to develop over the coming years a uniform way of producing data at the community level, data that is sensitive to collect because of the nature of the different issues that different communities faced, if that makes sense.
Any other?
This came from the fact that Scotland is incredibly good at collecting data sets, but most of it is absolutely incomprehensible to anybody who doesn't have a PhD in statistics. So we need a platform that can actually make data available in a form that communities can use, that's easily acceptable, and that actually builds on their own experience.
Is there anybody else?
Well, I'm also slightly confused about it, and I'm still slightly confused about it. Is this asking for a platform by which communities can conduct their own surveys of their own design, which is one thing, or is this asking for data that's being collected by Scottish Government to be presented in a more user-friendly way, things like the household survey and so forth? And I'm still not clear whether it's asking what it's asking for. Thanks, Janet. I'm going to make a suggestion. Because the author of this statement isn't here, we can sort of talk around what we think was the purpose, but it's really difficult to know what was really meant. And so I'm suggesting we actually just skip this one for now, and we can follow up with the author of that and circulate it afterwards as part of our report, because time is
of the
pressing.
essence.
Yeah, is that
Every
okay
content with that? Yeah. Okay. It'll all come back to you at some point in any case. Right, okay. So the next one is around food, and this one was Anne Thompson. Anne, are you? Yep, Anne.
It was after the point on local processing facilities, and came about from 3 workshops that I attended. People were specifically looking for the development of an IT portal which could be used by local communities to provide information on food available locally, for farmers to post surpluses of produce, and for cooks to be able to request produce, online retailing and supply chain development support services.
Thank you. Right, questions?
Again, I'm keen that we should specify who we're asking to do this.
Generally agreed. Thought? Anne?
I think that there's expertise abroad which could be tapped into by Scottish Government to suggest a system which could connect farmers to consumers.
So possibly Scottish Government? Possibly Scottish Enterprise? Possibly one or two of you? Put it out as a challenge, get somebody to do the work, all sorts of ways. So, yes, do you want to... Amanda?
Sorry.
Go on. No.
This action suggests to me an industry initiative with support from the relevant agencies to help take it forward, and that might well include a European angle to it as well.
Excellent.
I mean, this isn't an action planning bit.
It isn't, but it could be an aspiration, and to be worked through at some point in terms of an action beyond that. Yeah. So the question we're asking here, ought something like that to go into the manifesto as something to take forward? So I'm going to take it to a vote because I'm conscious of the time. Okay, the bar awaits soon. So we'll take it to the vote. Yellow to adopt this.
Is it a regional portal or a national portal?
To be worked through, I would suggest. But let's put it in. Okay, yellow to adopt it. Aspiration. Okay, red you think is a bad idea. Okay, I'm moving on at this stage. Thank you. So gender equality. So this was a specifically new section. Yeah. So there was, I think, a few comments I heard yesterday and today. So Alison. And We added in a couple more, Alison, so you had, I think, the first one.
No, I had the lot. But
Do you have the lot? That was missed out.
I had the lot, but you missed out the last bits. But they have been added in now. Just clarifying.
Just clarifying.
Okay, so it's gender equality. So to recognise that gender inequality is a continuing problem in rural Scotland, to strive to implement gender equality wherever possible, to recognise, publicise and work to eliminate all forms of gender discrimination, to support legal changes that promote gender equality, to raise consciousness about gender inequality, to work to eradicate cultural traditions that support gender inequality.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, so let's go to yellow cards in support of adding this section in, brand new section, okay? For those of you who dare, raise a red. You're only identifying yourself. We've got the hawks over there. There's 1, 2. You want to say anything? 3.
In the section on poverty and inequalities, it says a fairer and more equal society will benefit everyone. It's important to be inclusive and to celebrate all faiths, ethnicities, sexualities and abilities. It goes on in that vein. There's no need to have this additional section because it's already been covered.
It's not covered. That's the point.
Gender is only one issue here. We are sitting in an audience without a single black face or a coloured face of any kind. This is a much wider question. You know.
Can I propose the deletion of the words wherever possible at the end of the first paragraph?
Alison, are you? Yeah. So, yeah.
Sorry, just to pick there. The cultural traditions that support gender inequality, some points there's actually cultural traditions, but while they are purely one gender or another, they are traditions that I think should be supported and celebrated rather than lost.
Last comment?
We'll just take one more, please.
This is a general comment about the process. I think you should raise objections, ask for objections or different views before we take the vote, because we keep voting with a yellow card and then you ask for different ideas and then we have to vote again. So normally you would put the proposal, ask for objections and then the vote.
Thank you for that. We'll adopt that from now. Okay, so we had the vote on this. Yeah. So I'll move on. Housing and planning. A couple of ones on here. So the first one is limiting the proportion of holiday homes as well as second homes is essential. Third-party right of appeal should only be defined circumstances, not a blanket right of appeal. This was general addition. I'll take it on to the next one. This is a longer one, I'm afraid. Scottish communities cannot effectively or meaningful influence planning decisions in their local area. Planning system contains deep inequalities that need to be overcome before communities can meaningfully engage in planning. We ask that the Scottish Government address those inequalities, including calling for more rights for communities to appeal planning decisions. We want more properly developed inclusive community plans incorporated into local development plans, and for the right to appeal decisions that go contrary to those plans. That's a lengthy one. I think what we'll do is we'll take this one first.
Can we take this as two separate paragraphs because they are separate?
Yep, take two separate paragraphs. So first of all, any comments on this before we go to a vote on the two separate ones?
I've got a comment, and it's more of a caution that I'd want to ensure that that was worded in a way that made sure that hutting wasn't counted as part of holiday homes.
Hutting. that hutting isn't included as part of holiday homes.
With your permission, Chair, I'll save your time in terms of the second one by passing a comment about that at the end. As I understand the Scottish planning system, there is no third-party right of appeal. That was something that was attempted to be put into the legislation the last time that we had a planning review, and I know that it was taken out. So the second sentence is incompetent. If you could go on to the next one. Next slide, please.
That one?
Yeah. I think members of the Rural Parliament ought to be aware that the Scottish Government is currently engaged in an extensive and very significant review of the planning system. And there are quite a number of the points on there that the whole of the Rural Parliament ought to be aware can best be made by directly addressing them to the Scottish Government.
On that issue, so that delegates know, the Scottish Government's planning review working group, we were invited to participate in that, and I've got now today received the minutes of that, which we will publish to delegates on our website over the next week.
Anything else?
Go back on the... First of all, I'm not quite sure of the legal competency of limiting the proportion of holiday homes as well as second homes. It's already gone to legal cases of what is a holiday home. Effectively, everything will be overturned at appeal.
Okay.
The second one was mine. I don't know if you want to go on to it. I'm just responding to the gentleman that was talking about...
This one?
Yes. Well, I suppose it comes on the other one as well about the third-party right of appeals. Yes, the government are conducting a planning review currently, and the white paper is still being drawn up. Yes, they have said in their action plan that they will not consider equal right or third-party right of appeal. However, we have commitment from various opposition parties to putting an amendment in the white paper and the bill, so I don't think it is incompetent. I think it's something that we should strongly be challenging and asking for in the manifesto.
Okay, any more?
If we're going to vote on third-party right of appeal, I'd quite like to know what that is.
On the previous page, I put in the section about the third-party right of appeal. We discussed this at the open space session earlier, and my colleague there that spoke a minute ago, we'd come to, I thought, a middle ground, so to speak. The defined circumstances I was talking about there is where the planning committee go against the recommendation of the officers and grant something that's not in the local development plan, and in those circumstances, I believe that should be the circumstances where the community has a right of appeal to appeal against decision toward a planning consent. I think the primary driver of planning decisions should be what is in the local development plan, so that both developers and communities have some degree of certainty as to what's going to be developed in their area. My fear is if you have a blanket right of appeal that anyone in the community can appeal against any planning decision, then what that will do will serve to restrict development. And elsewhere in this section we're talking about a requirement for affordable homes in rural areas, and that will delay the development of housing developments because there's always someone that wants to object to some development. That may happen, it may not. We have a difference of opinion on that. But I was seeking to qualify the next section rather than have it as a standalone.
Confused? Yes. I think so there's a lot in here, there's a lot of detail which for most people just goes, whew, yeah? So we've got experts around who are saying, slightly differences, and I think it's about, highly defined nuances, but whether we feel competent to vote on this, I'm not so sure. So that may be something that I think Amanda and the board perhaps might need to take away. But can we vote on the first one? Are we happy to vote on that one? So yellow if you're in support of that. The first paragraph, limiting the proportion. So that first sentence.
Are we including the except for hutting?
Except for hutting. Except for hutting included, yeah. So yellow to vote in favour of that one. Red for those who object. Do you want to take a count? So you can leave your reds up.
This one, what we need to do is perhaps set up a working group to look at all the issues. So let's talk about now. We'll have a working group, make recommendations, deliver a paper, and at that point we can read and add it in.
Okay. Put up yellow, and we'll take account of the yellow. So 23 yellow. Okay. So 25 red, 23 yellow. On the second one, I'm wondering, Amanda, do you want to say something? Because we're saying that might be a problem.
What I'm suggesting is on this particular issue, because the planning review is ongoing and we are participating in that, what I would be looking to do is to set up a working group to examine these issues and planning in the wider context, and like we did with broadband, to actually do a report that makes our recommendations in that format. And that working group will be open to any of you who wish to participate. With the broadband one, we actually used online tools quite a lot, which meant that wherever you are in Scotland, you could still take part. So if you're interested in joining the working group for this, see me later, and I think we should just skip over it for now rather than including it in the manifesto at this point. Is everybody happy with that?
Okay.
Thanks. Yes.
Yeah.
We'll review that.
Okay, this one's about land. Simon Brooke. Simon.
Hi. So, one of the big issues in Scotland's politics, which is going to rumble on, I think, for probably decades, is our extraordinary distribution of land ownership, where half of all the private owned land in Scotland is owned by just 430 people.
So what are you seeking here? Do you want to just read that out?
My paragraph here is to seek to develop more diverse and heterogeneous patterns of land ownership. So I'm not suggesting there's any one particular wonderful system of land ownership. I'm suggesting we should let 1,000 flowers bloom on land ownership, to make land available to the homeless and to the landless, and to break up the largest estates.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any comments before we go to vote?
What exactly do you mean by breaking up the largest estates?
And the lady next to you.
My concern with that would be to specifically say the homeless and the landless would exclude a lot of people from that.
Simon, do you want to respond?
I have no wish to exclude anyone, but I would point out that rural homelessness is a very serious problem in some areas of remote rural Scotland at present, and people desperately need habitable homes. I can walk out my front door and visit 15 neighbours within 3 miles, living in old vehicles, in old caravans, in tents, with children in the school. And this is not acceptable.
Ooh, it's a bit daunting. I just want to maybe be a bit hesitant about the very last phrase and maybe put the full stop before then, because breaking up the largest estates is a really big statement, and there might be other ways of dealing with how we use our land more effectively in a different way. So just in terms of getting to the common view, maybe we can talk about that further in a different form. Thank you.
I'm concerned about giving land to the homeless. What are they going to do with this land? And why should they be selected because they're homeless when there are other people in society who may be equally deserving?
I'm against this for a variety of reasons. There seems to be two issues. The first issue, I think everybody here will agree, in fact, concerning homelessness and homelessness, wherein we start talking about large estates, where do we stop? The next community buyout? Break it up as well? Where do we stop with this one? I would like the second part of this thing well and truly removed, because the whole point of land use was not who owned it, it was how we were using it. And that was the purpose the Scottish Government stood up for. This would fly in direct contradiction to it.
The reason the homeless need land is they need somewhere to put a home. Well, that is exactly the point.
Okay, I think we've had a
range of views. Okay, are we going to go to the vote on this one? That's what was put forward.
Do you want to maybe vote in two halves? Vote on the first half up to the end of land ownership, and vote on the second half to be included. I think it would help people come to agreement on bits of it at least. So to begin with, let's vote on to seek to develop more diverse and heterogeneous patterns of land ownership.
Full stop.
Can you agree to that?
Can you agree? Those against? Okay. So one against that?
2, 3.
2, 3.
Very quickly, because we are very short of time.
Saying ownership. It should be occupancy.
Or stewardship.
Or stewardship. No, ownership is not the same.
Okay.
Okay.
I think we had a majority view on that. Yep. Now, the second vote would be to add on to that first half to make land available to the homeless and to the landless and to break up the largest estates. If we could have a show of colours for that.
Hold on. Do yellow first, please. Yellow first.
What? Okay, so split it down even more to make land available to the homeless and to the landless.
Yellow for that.
And okay, have we got a count? I think we might need a count on this.
Might need a count on this one. Hold on.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Gordon, does somebody want clarification?
Clarification of the word available.
21. 22. 23. 23. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Red.
And this is whether you want to include to make land available to the homeless and the landless. More than 23. Okay, so that bit will not be included. And finally, and to break up the largest estates, yellows.
Yellows first, isn't it?
Okay, so based on the show so far, that clause will be amended to just read, to seek to develop more diverse and heterogeneous patterns of land ownership.
Okay. Poverty? Sorry.
I'm sorry that this is a late interjection, but in our workshops on land use and management, we did come up with a suggestion for the land clause of the manifesto. So is it possible to put it in verbally, or has it got to be printed up before we can do that?
If it wasn't submitted beforehand, we can't...
Because we came straight out of our workshop and into here. So.
Oh, you're talking about the action plan?
Yeah.
So it may well be that for a lot of these topics, the action plan covers some of these themes. So,
but
not the manifesto.
But for the manifesto, we had a suggestion. So.
Yeah, I think that has to be part of the action plan. It can't be part of the manifesto. Because otherwise we could be here until Sunday.
And we did have the process quite clear as additions from yesterday and from this morning. So moving on. So this was a section a new section under poverty, about fuel poverty. Cat right. Cat here. Nope, so I'll read it quickly then. So rural fuel poverty too is overlooked and is essential. It is tackled to the extent that it is eradicated. Government policy to end it by November 2016 has to be revisited. More funding for community projects within rural areas should be more widely available, both to raise awareness and tackle fuel poverty. Is there any clarifications needed on this quickly? No? Okay, if in favour of that, raise the yellow cards. If you're against it, raise the red. Okay, that one's carried in. Thank you. We don't have many now. Transport. We've got a couple on transport. One, Anne, I think this is your one.
This is an addition. Strategies and action to deliver low-carbon commercial, personal and public transport in rural Scotland that also mitigates the need for rural fuel subsidies.
Okay. Any clarity required on that? Are we ready to vote? So in favour, yellow. Those against in red. Thank you. And this was Roland. Roland Stiven. Thanks, Roland.
Yeah, this is just to add infrastructure into transport. I'd note that it's already in tourism as improvements to Scotland's roads infrastructure for tourists. I just wanted it actually to be for people who live here. So investment in the modernisation of our road, rail and shipping infrastructure, serving rural Scotland's communities and rural land.
Good one. Okay, any clarity? Hold it. Hold on, do you want to wait?
Don't worry too much about the grammar, because the board will be polishing the grammar, and we have a couple of people on the board who are very pernickety, so it will all be smoothed out.
Yeah, so implied in here you're saying is we call for investment. Is that what you were saying? Does that help? Good.
Hello. Can we add air as well as road, rail and shipping?
I heard the sharp intake of breath. Do we add in air? Yeah, right, we're adding in air. Anybody else with comments? I'm dying for a drink, so hurry up, come on. Right, are we done? Okay, let's vote. In favour, yellow, including air. Those against? Thank you very much. And you will be pleased to know this is the last one. It's a biggie. Okay, this was Carol Hutton.
My proposal is that we include in the manifesto that there is a requirement for dedicated housing for armed forces veterans to be made available in small and very small rural areas which lie out with the medium to large urban areas. They should take the form of miniature communities of up to 10 units of mixed housing styles to be inclusive for families. Single veterans who are able to live physically independent lives but still maintain the close emotional and social ties which are taught and fostered in the armed services profession. These need to be assured long-term tenancies at LHA cost levels. The reason being there are small communities of veterans housing, but they're all attached to medium to large urban communities. There are many of us out there who are veterans who require low-cost housing, but we're perfectly capable of living very independent lives because there's nothing overly requiring of ongoing support that you can only get in an urban area. So I feel it's important that armed forces veterans who have perhaps very close ties to rural areas, they've come from rural areas, but they can't return to those rural areas when their service is done because there's nowhere specific for them to live.
Thank you very much. Okay, any clarity required on that? Who's to pay for it? I suppose you could argue the same with a lot of the other ones. Who's going to pay for it? So I don't think it's possibly...
I think that comes out in the action planning rather than the manifesto.
Yes, and there are existing Scottish Veteran Garden City Association and various other housing schemes throughout the country which are run through charitable donations from all over.
Is this the last one?
I don't have any problems at all with the suggestion, but I do wonder why it has to be a separate heading rather than coming under housing, because we could actually put in veterans, disabled, young people, and also I don't know why it has to have a spot of its own.
It's specifically because veterans and armed forces people have led very, very different lives, and they very much thrive in inclusion and in close contact with those who have come from similar backgrounds. And that's about as... I don't want to take up too much more time, but there's lots more to it.
So would you be comfortable if we actually voted for it as a section within housing that was specifically about dedicated housing for forces veterans? Yes?
Okay.
We'll vote for it as that then,
So
as an additional clause.
Yeah, so it just goes under the housing and planning. Okay? So those in favour? Yellow. Those against? Red. There's a handful. Okay? Right. I am very conscious that took us a little bit longer than expected, however. We'll be fine. Stay cool. I am. Not a lot. So we now we have moved beyond, I would suggest, draft. Essentially, I think what we've got with these additions is a manifesto version 1.0, which the board will take forward and do some work on. At some point it will have to then become a version 2, like any good document control. But for the moment here we have a version 1.0. What I'd like us to do is, with a rousing aye at the top of your voices, if you're in favour of this version 1.0 being taken forward by the SRA board and your good selves, then say aye. Aye. Thank you. Gordon.
A big vote. Thanks, please, Tandy, for handling that. And quite right too, because a long, long time ago I said, was it 10 o'clock this morning? You've got a lot of work ahead of you, and a lot of fun too. Who fancies getting up on their feet? Because what you've just done is you've identified, as Andy said, the final draft and given the SRA a lot of work. And the next 2 years are going to be busy. What they need to know from you, however, how are we going to prioritise that? Okay? And that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to help them by prioritising it and giving the board members a real indication of what really matters in all of that and that. Okay? So you've got a chance here to exercise your right to vote by using your legs, and you've got 2 cards, red and yellow, that indicates 2 votes. And if I see anybody using more than 2 votes, then you'll be red carded. Okay? And they're displayed. All the issues that we've agreed are displayed at either end. And this is a chance for you now to indicate your preference so that the SRA have got a real indication of what you think is really important of all that. Now, I can tell that everything is important, but because the heartfelt sentiment into that debate. But I'd ask you to do this as quickly and as efficiently as we can and come back to your seats. Yeah, the colours now are insignificant. Both votes are equal. Both votes are equal. So you get 2, so you can choose your first preference and your second preference, or you can put them both in the same ballot box. You don't need to separate them. Okay?
Excellent.
Yeah, no, we would very much like.
We said at the beginning of the Parliament this year, and it was reiterated again, I think, by Amanda this morning, that there's a real chance here to integrate, and you've proven you can do that in bucket loads, which is great. The staff are just now counting the votes for us, and Amanda will give us that result in a minute. And this one, some people may have drifted into the cafeteria, I'm not sure. I'd like now just to invite you to reflect on your experience over the last 2 days. The people whom you've met, the discussions you've had, some old acquaintances even refreshed, and new friendships made. But in particular, and one of you noted this, that I said the priority is for Scottish Rural Action to move forward with the priorities. But in actual fact, it's for all of us, isn't it? We're all here because we care about our communities. That's why we came to Brechin this week. That's why we look forward to it. And what we're looking forward to now to go away and do, to achieve and make that happen. Because we know that Scottish Rural Action can't just do it on their own. We all need to play a part in that. So what I'd like to ask you to do, I'm inviting you to do, is just take the person next to you, whether you know them, lifelong friend, new acquaintance this week, and just ask that question, what am I going to do to make this happen? How can I play a part? We've been at action focus groups, we've been at open space, we've learnt new ideas. How does that impact upon me as I move forward and make this happen to make my community and all our communities an even better place? 5 minutes, hopefully we should have the results. Thank you.